then but lots of people are, recently there's evidence that people are paying off this huge personal level of personal debt. But if you happen to be on benefits, you happen to be disabled, if you happen to be an old age pensioner, the fact is that every additional pound you gets spent benefits you and it benefits the economy. So there's a need for a completely new approach to pensions and benefits. And in the short and medium term, we should be arguing for the immediate re-indexing of the retirement pension to national incomes rather than IPI, and it's raising to the levels that it would have been if it hadn't been sabotaged, which is currently about £165, £170 a week. Another increased benefit should be increased by the same sort of order. But what we actually need to move to is a new pension scheme, because we know that occupational pensions are eroding like a snowball in the Sahara. At the end of January, it was announced that the total deficit in occupational pension funds had increased by 49% in something a bit over a month. More and more firms are now closing their schemes, and workers who have actually got private schemes are finding those eroding too. So we should demand that the state underwrites, in effect nationalises occupational pensions in the short to medium term, and in the longer term introduces a new universal state earnings related pension scheme of SERPs, which would over a period of time incorporate existing state and private occupational pensions. So funding the sort of programme that I've been galloping through at a tremendous rate, the sort of energy conservation and renewable energy plan outlined by the Green New Deal costed between 50 and 70 billion a year, and the additional programme that I've suggested, which means huge retooling of basic industry, would be between another 40 and 60. So we're talking about finding something like 110 billion, which is about 7.5% of GDP. And there's a panic. You've all seen the panic at the moment. The public debt is up to 56% of GDP. Well, the fact is, Japan currently has a national debt. It's about 194% of GDP. The USA, Italy, it's over 100. The USA is about 70. And in fact, our debt until the late 70s, from the First World War on, was never ever less than 50%. And in fact, after the Second World War, it stood at 250% of GDP. And we're talking about an effort, we're talking about a programme as big as retooling for a war, for the Second World War. So, how do we pay for it? First, making tax more fair and effective. At the moment, the poorest 1/5 in Britain pay 36.5% of their income in tax. The richest 1/5 pay 35.5% of their income in tax. So we must move away from regressive taxation. And you know, the Labour announced this 50% tax for people with incomes over 150,000. And there was had a wonderful report in the Scotsman from Chris Sanger, who's head of tax policy at Ernst & Young. He said the key risk to such extreme rates is that they will deter entrepreneurs and successful wealth creators from coming to Britain. Well, bugger me, I wish we could have got in earlier things. It would be much better if I hadn't come to Britain. So there are a number of straightforward ways we could both tax fairer and increase the tax take. Firstly, we could we could raise nearly 24 billion a year by introducing a variety of new tax bands, which I won't go into. Secondly, minimum reforms to council tax, like introducing land value tax, raising it to 7 billion. Abolishing tax relief on pension contributions from incomes over 100,000 would generate an additional 4 billion a year. The TUC says that 12 billion a year may be lost from Britain's 700 largest corporation on tax avoidance schemes, and 13 billion by wealthy individuals, thanks to planning and avoidance. And incidentally, it's suggested that 15 times as much as last through tax avoidance at the top than to benefit fraud at the bottom. And yet, thousands of people are employed to and TV advert. When did you last see a TV advert with a searchlight coming down on the bloke getting out of a Bentley saying, "We're coming to get you"? You know, no, it's some poor bastard in Tesco filling. The Green Party has suggested, for example, that increasing air passenger duty could generate an additional 9 billion. My particular pet scheme is the sterling stamp duty, SSD, which is a variation of the Tobin tax. But the problem about the Tobin tax, where each country puts a very small tax on all currency transactions that take place in that country. The thing is, it doesn't work unilaterally because people simply do the trading elsewhere. The idea of a sterling stamp duty is that you actually tax all sterling transactions wherever they are in the world, because actually the payment reporting systems means that it is actually possible for the government to do that. That could raise between 30 and 40 billion a year, because the sort of quantities, the sort of turnover on sterling is the fourth most traded currency in the world, and the sort of turnover of currency transactions are staggering. So, but then of course we should perhaps be doing about 30 seconds. But we could also be doing what the Times and everybody says we should be doing, which is cutting spending. Because there's lots of spending we could cut. For example, ID cards, NHS national database, motorway and major roads building programmes, Trident, the two aircraft carriers. Cancelling Trident alone would save 100 billion over the next 40 years. So cancelling those sort of projects would immediately give us savings of 7 billion a year. British defence policy, which is always renowned as the equivalent of a middle-aged man's red Ferrari, it seems to me, is where, in a sense, is like a sort of giant penis extension for the British ruling class. And it costs, 33 billion a year. Well, I mean, it's just unsupportable. Now, so if on top of the cancellation of Trident, which would save about 3 billion a year, we were progressively cut the defence budget by 2/3 over 4 years, it would give a saving of 5.5 billion a year. So what this means is that, in fact, just the first run through the financial spending situation said that savings in public spending we could easily make would be 12.5 million a year, and additional sums generated by increased taxation would be at least 104 billion a year. So actually the sort of programmes that we're working for, we can say they are affordable. The sort of programmes that are necessary are not only necessary, but they are affordable. But of course, the sort of proposals that I've talked about won't just happen. They have to be fought for, and they have to be fought for by a mass movement of ordinary working people. And the key thing is which is prepared not only to challenge, and I think there is a move to challenge the privileges of the rich and powerful, that have been exposed so much over the last year, but also of the state which serves them.